and welcome to another episode of the Tech for Good Live podcast. It's the 3rd of November, the US election is upon us, and since today's already going to be a complete nightmare from which we may never awake, we figured, that went well. Just going to start again. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Tech for Good Live podcast. It's the 3rd of November, the US election is upon us, and since today is already going to be a complete nightmare from which we may never awake, we figured, what's the harm in adding to the horror by doing a live recording? In this election special, we'll be talking about political Facebook adverts, we'll be talking about bias accusations against social media, we'll be talking about the Hold the Line, a guide to defending democracy, and we'll be talking about Hackers, not the movie, and online attacks during the campaign. There's so much at stake today, and the effects will be felt all around the world. Who better to spend this time with than us bunch of twats? We desperately hope that people will make good choices and that the world tomorrow is a little more hopeful than it was yesterday. Joining me on this political misadventure, we have Johnny. Johnny's plan for the election night is to eat a lot of pizza, drink a lot of wine, eat a lot of chocolate, and then curl up in a ball and cry. Hopefully, tears of joy. Hello, Johnny. Is Johnny gone?
Johnny is no longer here. He's
so
given
successful.
up. He's given up.
Live podcast, brilliant. He's probably already crying. Greg is back on the podcast. Greg, what are your election night plans?
I have none. I've got no plans. Like, I didn't want to build it up too much and get myself all excited. Also, my dog had me up at 2 a.m. yesterday, so I'm knackered.
Faye, our US correspondent, is back in the UK. She's out of quarantine just in time for lockdown to kick back in. Faye, what's your election night plans?
Pretty much this, to be honest, and maybe trying to stay up and watch it, but then maybe I don't want to watch it. Who knows? I have no plans right now. I'm going renegade. I have no plans.
Johnny came back talking about going renegade. We talked about how you were going to eat pizza and drink lots of wine. We thought you'd gone away to start that early.
Yeah, oven's on, pizza's ready. That's it. I'm ready now. All set.
And I'm Bex. My plans are to watch Johnny curl up in a ball and cry. Hopefully, again, tears of joy. We also have multiple guests with us, which is very exciting. Mariam and Anka, the members of the team behind the creation of the Hold the Line Guide, a guide for everyday folks to take action to make sure the US election is free and fair. That sounds great. Hello, both of you.
Hello, so excited to be on this potentially very terrifying day.
Yes, I'm very happy to be here with all of you too. Excited to talk about stuff and hopefully find the silver lining. And some positivity, right?
Yeah. See, I love that. This is why we're doing it across 3 time zones, because when you stick a load of Brits on a podcast, we just get really sarcastic and glum and dark about everything. And this is why you need Americans in your life. Love it.
Typically from California. We got a lot of sunshine here.
Exactly. Pour it in. Please send it through the Zoom.
Is it a good idea to do predictions? Are we all being positive right now? Is that what's happening?
What, you want to start gambling? Do you mean predictions in kind of a gambling way, or just in how it's gonna go?
Hey, you're the one that brought up gambling. That was definitely not what I was on about.
Just saying.
Does anyone want to get into the predictions?
I've been super optimistic for weeks and for months, but then as we've got closer and closer to the day, I've become increasingly terrified and concerned, but I'm still trusting and hoping that the right result will prevail, but who knows? I've been burnt too many times, Greg. Don't know.
Yeah, I feel like predictions on something like this, it's just so hard to call. I don't feel like everything I've seen says no one can predict it because people lie about how they're voting. It's weird. I don't know, our American friends could talk more about this, but everything I've read and listened to, it's people are scared to even tell their friends and family who they're voting for from both sides. So yeah, it just feels like any kind of poll or anything like that is just going to be skewed by these, kind of scared Biden and scared Trump supporters.
Yeah, I guess the one thing that gives me a little bit of hope is seeing the massive turnout and early voting numbers across the country. Really gives a sense that I was actually I was going to UPS store the other day to pick up a package, and the folks at the counter were talking about what's the best way to drop off the ballot. Is it better to go to like the drop-off box or mail it in given the timing? So there is this, I think, public consciousness in this moment, which I've never seen so public before. And that does give me some hope, but I agree. There's no way to really know, looking at the polls and all this, what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I'll also add, I mean, I don't care much for predictions, because I think the real thing that we need to be talking about is like, what are you doing right now? I'd rather be spending my minutes doing something instead of thinking about what could happen. And so I'm actually really hopeful, because I've been lit in rooms full of so many virtual rooms full of people who just have so much vigor and energy from across the country. And it's literally the first time they're talking about the nuances of elections. Like, people maybe, I don't know if there's like more people than normal voting or not. We can look at the numbers after today. But what I do know is that there's more people paying attention to the process of how democracy works than there was before. Like, that is a fact. And like, that is, I think, what gives me more hope, because more people paying attention to the process is going to predict only positive things coming down the line, than just people putting down a vote because somebody's like guilt tripping them into voting, or like just telling them, oh, you need to do it right now, without explaining what the impact actually is. So that's why I'm really hopeful and really excited, because I think we're going to do fine. I think it's going to be great.
Why do you think it is that, I guess, that increased engagement? Is that because it is so bad that it is rage and outrage has like driven people, or has it been a steady progression towards people getting to this stage that they're more engaged?
Yeah, what I find is that when people are put in positions where, like when there's like rampant injustice, people want to find solutions. They will they want to take the solution into their own hands, because they know that the people who actually have power are not actually doing the work. And so they start to slowly recognize that the power is actually in their hands already. And what that does, I think it's a catalyst for understanding how systems work. And once you understand how systems work, there's just more engagement and this like passion to really figure out, well, there's a system. What levers can I actually pull to make my life better? Because I'm sick and tired of having to drive Postmates every single day. Like, I'm sick and tired of seeing my friends and family sick. I'm sick and tired of my friends who are immigrants being targeted on a daily basis. I'm sick and tired of my family suffering, in this country. And none of these people are going to do anything about it. So I guess I'm going to figure it out. And I think that's how movements build. People like really taking that agency into their own hands. And I think that's why we're seeing this right now, because I'm sure you've seen, like, in the United States, like, there's a huge wealth gap. It's getting bigger and bigger by the day. The state of the health of the people of the United States has just plummeted way before COVID even hit. Like, their diabetes was killing people left and right, and COVID-19 only amplified pre-existing conditions, right? So many other factors, like living in the United States was not glamorous. And yeah, so people have been feeling this. COVID amplified it. And I think that's why people are really trying to make this election, try to understand how they can use this election to make their lives better. Yeah, I'm taking up a lot of space. So Unker or anyone else want to add?
There's your American optimism that you wanted. It's like, but it's true. No, I think it's true. And I think it's that gives me hope as well, as just seeing folks really step up in this moment.
It is a level of positivity we don't get often. So can you both come back every week? It'll be really good.
Would love to.
Well, they can if they want, but I'll always do this where I move into start of the week. And then what will happen is Greg's found some really, really awful statistic on the internet. And this particular one is about Biden paying double for Facebook ads. Greg, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what you found to cheer us up on this day?
Doing you all a good service here and bringing the tone down. So this is from my new one of my new favorite news sites, The Markup. who have done a study of ad spend across the Biden and Trump campaigns. So the double spend is a little bit of a misclaimer. That was only in swing states. Generally, it was around about $2.50 more than the Trump campaign. So that was across all states. But definitely there is an indication that Biden is paying more for ads. Now, the challenge you've got with this, so they've done this study, they've got the evidence to say that it is happening. The problem is because of the way that the ads system works on Facebook, where it automatically sets a price, there's no way to clearly understand why that is happening. There is some indication in the article that they think it might be because of the type of things and the type of ads that the Trump campaign are posting. It means that it gets more views, and that helps to reduce the cost of those. But yeah, what does everybody think of this, and are we surprised?
No, not surprised in any way, shape, or form. Like, Facebook continues to be one of the most evil social media platforms, not even just social media platform, websites, tech giants, whatever you want to call them, kind of out there. Like, don't get me wrong, there's ways that nonprofits and charities and organizations can do a lot of good by either bringing people together or like raising money on Facebook. But it's just, I think, especially in this year and in this political climate, the way that Facebook has been firing up hate amongst different groups of people, especially, and especially in such a turbulent year, whether, with the election and with COVID, it doesn't shock me anymore. Like, you know what I mean? You could read to me the most horrific headline about Facebook and I just go, meh, okay, fine. It just nothing, nothing is surprising, unfortunately, anymore.
Yeah, they obviously the algorithm favors relevance. So if the Trump campaign's posting things that infuriates people, and that's the way that Facebook works, by infuriating people, then it's going to be more and more relevant. So their ads are going to cost less. So it's kind of fueling its own relevance. It's like, eating its own tail in a way. How about guys in America? Have you been seeing much ads on Facebook recently, and kind of what's the tone? Although you may be in kind of an echo chamber potentially.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting. I was looking at the examples that they shared in the article, and you have the Joe Biden one, which is expand Medicare to age 60, which apparently is a radical position. And then on the right you have Donald Trump saying the radical left has taken over Joe Biden and the Democratic Party, and they're paying $14 CPM versus 91. Yeah, I mean, I do think the messaging piece is at the core of it, but I also think there's a piece around how Facebook sees its role in politics that's important to consider. One of the things that was kind of interesting when we started this whole Divine Guide project was one of the folks from the election integrity team at Facebook reached out to us and said, hey, like, what are your thoughts on what might happen after November 3rd? How can we as a platform prepare for that? And one of the interesting questions that they brought up, or it was an interesting insight into how they think about their role, is they were asking, well, if we went ahead and banned folks from launching new Facebook ads, for example, wouldn't that hurt the organizing potential that nonprofits might be able to use Facebook for? And kind of our position was, at the very minimum, do no harm. Just try to make it a space where you're not actively amplifying a lot of the right-wing talking points and misinformation out there. And then you can worry about, is your platform going to be kind of the basis for the revolution? And I think it seems like, at least from some of the stuff they put out in recent weeks, that they're considering that and heading in that direction. But it seems like it's still so weighted in one side that they have a lot to do to even balance that equation.
A lot to do. Yeah, we've got the other story here as well about evidence that they've skirted their own measures. So the disciplinary measures appear to have been a lot more lenient towards conservatives, so a conservative bias. And the indication is that is due to this anti-conservative bias that's been coming up. So they've got a lot of people it's that attitude of, whoever's shouting the loudest, you take on board what they're saying. So it feels like a lot of conservatives are accusing them, so they're kind of backing down. And we saw something similar with actions from Twitter and others following the hearings the other day. So yeah, it feels like they're just treading water in a way. Everything good that they do, they end up undoing by another department does that. Is it just because they're so big now and everybody's making different decisions?
I'm curious what other people's experience has been, but it was interesting just in that conversation to understand that it's not, at least the way that kind of folks maybe internally think about it. I know a few folks who work there, where it is not necessarily organized in the way that I imagined it. It wasn't necessarily Mark Zuckerberg or whoever at the top driving it. It really is kind of different teams going off and making their own decisions, which I think actually, on the one hand, it's great to have that kind of, I guess, empowered leadership structure, but it leads to a lot of issues, I think.
I think it's like a terrifying barometer of how good you are if Twitter make you look irresponsible, but you've got them. They were quite early in banning political ads, and they're kind of labeling the tweets that the Trump campaign, because the Trump campaign tend to put out more misinformation than the Biden's campaign, that they tend to kind of label those a little bit, which you're not really kind of seeing from Facebook. And the figures involved in kind of the revenue that they're making from those ads is massive. And I guess the lack of responsibility that these organizations can tend to show is so outweighed by the impact that they have and the influence that they have, that it's kind of terrifying the damage that they can do. Where I think it's easy to think, like you said, that Zuckerberg is being, is like laughing maniacally over a globe, twirling his mustache with a veil of green mist behind him as he destroys the world. It's entirely possible he is doing that. Like I wouldn't be shocked. But like everything is a design decision. Everything man-made is designed, usually badly designed because no one's put any thought in it. But someone has built these systems and they work in this way. And even if it is this kind of automated auction function that they have that generates the placement of ads and the cost of ads, and that accidentally is charging one campaign more than the other, like, that is terrifying. Like, just shut that down until you fixed it, because the impact that could have is absolutely massive, and people die because of the results of elections like this. And it's so weird to kind of say, oh yeah, it's just kind of the way the algorithm works, it is what it is. It's like a terrifying response to it. I just don't understand it.
I've said it before. It's kind of like Facebook is like a government agency now. Like, so they are at that point where I honestly think they're having conversations internally where they're like, well, this is probably killing a load of people. Should we shut it down? And like, it's too big if we shut it down. What happens to the millions of people that are currently using it in an okay fashion? And I think they're honestly having conversations like that where it's like those kind of decisions, and they just don't. It's got out of their own control now. It's like a snowball, and they just got to let it roll.
That is true. That is true. And this conversation just trying to bring a bit of Mariam's California positivity back into it. I mean, we have, amongst all kind of the hatred and everything that Facebook has really spurred up this year. And again, like I say, it's moved me to the point where I'm just not shocked anymore. Like, you can read article after article and it's just not surprising. But what I do think has been super positive, and we've seen for kind of the first time in like a big way against Facebook this year, is kind of all the brands and organizations earlier in the year when they brought out like Stop Hate for Profit, and like taking a stand against the machine, if you will, and kind of just being like, no, we're not doing this anymore. And I think, really kind of depending on the results of this election, we're not, it could go any which way right now. But I think, as you were kind of saying, Miriam, because people are so fired up and are so kind of willing to like take a stand or hold the line. See what I did there? It'll be interesting to kind of see how people stand up against, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, like whatever else in this world. So I think, the next couple of months is going to be really interesting in terms of what people are just not willing to take anymore. Whether that will, whether it will change on a global scale, who knows? I kind of hope so, but I think people are just feeling potentially a lot more empowered to say no than they ever have been.
Yeah.
There's a perfect segue there for you, Bex.
Well, I don't know. It's nice that you're all being positive and stuff, but there has been some very deliberate stuff this year. You can't put it all down to, there's some teams that have gone off on one and there's been an algorithm that no one was really paying too much attention to. Like, some of the stuff has been incredibly deliberate. And this is where I'm leading into hold the line. So like there has been like proper, tampering feels like an official word. I don't know if there's been like reported official tampering of the election, but there's definitely been some really undemocratic things going on. So I guess it sounds like hold the line has been developed in response to some of this. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, totally. I can kick us off on that. The impetus behind Hold the Line, which is this guide that we put together, me, Mariam, and two of our co-authors, Kifa Shah and Hardy Mariam, to prepare for a contested election scenario where we have a situation tonight where it's not clear what the results are, but Donald Trump claims victory anyway, or it is clear what the results are. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have won, but Trump claims victory anyway. And recognizing that that was a possibility, the impetus for us was when in June, Trump ordered members of the military to violently suppress nonviolent protests in DC, kind of in the aftermath of the George Floyd protests, as an indication of what could happen in this country and what lengths Trump would go to stay in power. And so we started putting this guide together as a response to that, both with the purpose of explaining, hopefully in a kind of clear and relatively concise way, all the different scenarios that might unfold after November 3rd, because there's kind of the state level process in the US where, each state counts up their votes and then has, the electoral college that then decides on who the president is. And then the kind of federal level after that. But then second, also really equip people to take action. So not just be weighed down by this information, but actually start to organize and build up teams that can respond and plan for this moment. And so I think the reality is, there's massive kind of barriers and challenges to voting that have been very intentional this year and kind of, build on a long legacy of that in the United States. I think our hope is that as imperfect as this democracy is, by folks really taking ownership, as Mariam was saying, in this moment, we can not only get through this election, but kind of start a new almost ethic around rebuilding our democracy in the ways that we need to, moving forward. Because, regardless of what happens the next 3 months, there's so much that needs to be fixed that, really the work is just starting.
I do always say that I think the thing that surprised me about all of this is I just thought loads of it wouldn't be allowed. Like they would, through the whole process, through the last few years, every step of the way, I've been completely gobsmacked that these things have happened and that there wasn't a process in place to stop them from happening. It's just really opened my eyes to that entire process. I think I was super naive and just thought we were all safe and protected because of a system that isn't really fit for purpose against this sort of activity, I guess.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail there. No system is ever going to protect anyone, to be quite honest. People protect people. Even COVID-19, we saw, the government did not swoop in and give people stimulus checks immediately when COVID-19 had hit. How many months did it take them to actually put money in people's bank accounts? It took them months. And like we saw, like during COVID-19, there were mutual aid funds that were built up. People were checking in on their neighbors. We were all taking care of ourselves. I'm not that we didn't need the government, but they didn't come in fast enough. And so it's just a reminder that democracy works when people are activated because of that underlying acknowledgement that people are the ones who can take care of people, not systems. I also I want to talk about how you were talking about how we didn't see this coming, and how targeted and planned a lot of these election subversion attempts are. That targeting and that planning has been happening for honestly centuries in the United States of America. Like the Voting Rights Act initially only allowed rich white men, not the Voting Rights Act, the 14th Amendment initially only allowed rich white men to vote. Then we got to just white men. Then they let, when after the Civil War, right, we other people started being allowed to vote. And so this country has a history of strategically not allowing people to participate in democracy. And I think that's really what we're seeing here. Like we're reaching a point where we are starting to find the pockets and the systems that were set up centuries ago and are still upheld, and we're starting to take them down. One example, across the country, there's a lot of Voting Rights Act violations happening, crazy Voting Rights Act violations. In North Carolina, there was just a case that's going to their Supreme Court that won't allow curbside voting. So anyone who's disabled can't vote. In Texas, the governor issued an executive order saying that only one ballot location can exist in a county. There's 14 million people in Harris County. One drop-off ballot location is not going to fit 14 million ballots. It's literally impossible. In other counties, there's now a lot of cases, the Republicans are trying to sue, trying to invalidate certain ballots under crazy claims and stuff like that. So there is a system. The system supports voter suppression, to be quite honest. And so the only way that we are going to stop voter suppression is if we, the people, come together and demonstrate and say that we are not going to stand for it, and that there's a line. There's just these lines that we're going to hold, and you all can't cross it. So that's what we really advocate for in the guide. At the end of the day, you coming, linking up with your friends, linking up with your family members, your local community is what is going to protect democracy. One of our co-authors, he's done a lot of research around civil resistance in a lot of different countries. One thing that he talks about is democracy insurance. And he basically says that us simply talking and gathering is building up democracy insurance in this country. So even if we may not win an election, that community that has now been built is going to set us up to protect democracy moving forward and move forward the agenda that we want, that the people essentially want. So that's just my response. Voter suppression has been happening for forever, and it's going to keep happening until we change the system.
It reminded me of so I learned about the hanging Chad and the whole Bush election and the Brooks Brothers riots. And I mean, I kind of knew about that stuff, but I didn't really understand it. So when I saw this for the first time, when I heard about that case and how it happened, and for people that don't know, there was the hanging Chad was issues with the way that the voting system worked during the Bush Al Gore election. There was loads of votes which were kind of viewed as either not counted or damaged or counted the wrong way. And then there was calls for a recount, but while they were trying to recount, groups of white men largely would gather at the places where they were doing the recounts and basically protested so vehemently that they stopped them doing the recount. And I thought, that is just insane. And the language that was used at that time, that talk of stealing the election, is, you hear it all the time in Trump's campaigning now. And in my head, I was like, how did they just decide, well, we're not going to do the recount because these people protested? Just seems insane to me. But two, I was like, well, how do you stop that? And this seems like a perfect response to that kind of thing, that kind of movement, is to fight against it with another movement that encourages people to support and defend their democracy. So I just felt like this was what I was looking for when I was like, how do you stop those people who are just trying to twist the rules to meet their own ends?
It makes me think of the question at the beginning of how do you think it's going to go? And it seems really startling that I'd be much more comfortable making a guess if you knew everybody who is eligible to vote is able to vote, and that you had confidence that that vote would be counted. Doesn't feel as risky a prediction, but the fact that there's so many obstacles, like all of the ones that you listed, I'm sure there's like so many more as well. And almost like cartoon villainy makes it sound like it's fun. Like obviously I don't mean it in a cartoony sense, but the idea that particularly Republicans are like not even pretending that they're not trying to stop people voting, like the thing that was thrown out in Texas yesterday, they just wanted to write off 120,000 votes, and like quite openly saying, oh yeah, we want to stop people from voting, we want to put in these measures that will make votes not count, or we want to change the way that votes are tallied in places. Is just, I'm conscious of bubbles as well. Do you get any impression of how that looks from if you were a Republican voting and you see that, and it's not hidden behind a veil of we're trying to cut out these votes to protect for some kind of real reason why, there doesn't seem to even put together a fake narrative of why it's a good thing for America to stop them. How does that land on the other side? Is it just something they don't think about? I don't understand that.
Yeah, one of the interesting things is that I was looking at some polling data recently. There's kind of a group of folks who've been doing a lot of research thinking about what is the messaging post November 3rd, to both Republicans and Democrats. And so one of the things that they found is that almost, universally, even Republicans, even Trump voters, specifically people who are, clear Trump voters, agree that he's a liar, that he can't be trusted. And so I think part of the work that we have to do is not necessarily make this, kind of Republican versus Democrat, but really make it clear that it's about, an individual and a kind of small group of people around him in particular that are trying to exploit the system for personal gain. I think that lands in a way that resonates with a broader audience than just kind of the typical, parties and groups of people.
I don't really know what to say to that. I have like so many questions. I think the thing that surprises me as well, and Johnny, you always said this, like Trump's gonna just say he doesn't agree with the outcome, and I was like, tough shit. Tough shit, but it's not. I just can't believe that that's even a thing that we even have to like work against. Just baffles me every single day. But it really is. It really is. It's a thing, and so. I'm worried. I want to know what to do. You very helpfully pulled together a guide, which I'm going to pore over, and action. So if people are thinking the same as me, like, what can I do? And I love that you're like, doesn't matter if you just feel like you're a little speck and what can I do? You can do something, and it is important. Like, there's a guide, go read it. We're going to link to it in the podcast description. But if you were going to say one thing that you should do, like tomorrow, what should people be doing?
Or today.
Today,
get out and vote. Get out the vote. I'll say one thing, and then Mariam, I know you've been working a lot with folks who have been taking action. I actually think one thing that we don't have in the guide, which I want to lift up, is I do think it's important for people to pause and remind themselves of what the future is that we actually want to build, because the next, definitely the next few weeks and probably the next few months are going to be so much. There's going to be an attempt to shape the narrative around the two candidates, right? Like Biden versus Trump. And it's not about that. It's about the will of the people being respected and about us moving forward as a country to be able to address the challenges, the really real challenges we have around COVID, around the economy, all of that. So I think even before you're like looking to take action, having that moment to pause and reflect and remind ourselves and be grounded in what we want to do and what we're building towards feels important. And I think will bring a lot more people together than if it just becomes kind of partisan back and forth. But yeah, Mariam, I don't know. I'm sure you can speak to a lot of specific things people can do as well.
Yeah, I mean, we made like a little list for folks because we actually had a lot of people asking that question. Well, what can I do on election day? Like, I want to know what I should be doing on November 3rd. But yeah, obviously, number one thing is vote. We also always say, like, you want to, even if you do vote, you want to vote triple. So try to get more people. Go find 3 other people, 4 other people. Make sure they voted. Like, literally, like, it goes down to small numbers. Like, in terms of people turning out to vote. Like, there's so many phone banks happening right now across the country. People are trying to call voters in like swing states and just trying to make sure that we can like get everything that we possibly can, because we know that if there's more ballots that are cast for Biden, like by like a larger margin, it sets us up for an easier battle after November 3rd. Like, Trump will have less and less to legitimize election fraud and like all of the claims he's ready to make. So that's number one, vote and get everyone else out to vote. The other stuff is depending on where you're located and also like what you're able to do. Like, I know some folks you want to stay inside because of COVID. There's like we always talk about trying to support the people that are standing in line. So a lot of polling locations were consolidated because of COVID-19. There's less poll workers out there, and so there's less places to vote. So there's a lot of resources out there now of people literally sending pizza to the polls. So people who are in line don't leave, and they like they have what they need to make sure that their ballot is cast. I'm sure like in every county, there's people that are handing out water bottles. So if you've got some free time on your hands and you're able to go outside and it's totally safe for you, then go out. Make sure that if there's lines in your county, that you're helping those people finish up their votes. And you're going to help them get to the finish line. The other thing is, I know some folks are really scared of like election violence. Like, there's been like a lot of threat around alt-right groups showing up to polling locations. There's like a lot of trainings around de-escalation. I don't think they're happening. They might be happening today, but you want to. A lot of people say like be careful like when you're like going back from the voting location too. Like, I know a lot of people say like watch around the polling area, but you also want to watch. Like, maybe like go with another person if you're going to go vote in person, stuff like that. Like, think about your safety if you know that you're in an area where that might happen. And then finally, the battle is not over after you cast your vote. So from November 4th, or from now until December 8th, we've got 35 days until like the next inflection point of like a deadline that we kind of have some power over. So within this 35 days, states and counties are basically supposed to like do all the math, finish counting the votes, resolve any election fraud that might have happened or accusations and stuff. And by December 8th, like they have to confirm who their electors are. So a lot of things can happen between these 35 days. So what we're telling everyone to do is be vigilant. Figure out who has the power in your county, who's like the county officials, who's your state reps, and watch what they're doing. Or at least and even tell them that you're watching. You want to add that pressure, like don't try to like step out of line. The people are watching. And so there's a lot of ways to watch what's happening. We go into it a lot more in detail in the guide. And we also have weekly general assemblies now that we started because it's necessary now. So if you want to come to a space, we have them every Sundays at what time? Sorry, East Coast, West Coast messes with me.
6 p.m. Eastern, yeah. And it's
if you Eastern.
Yeah, if you go to the website,
if you go to the website, it'll be on there. Info. Yeah, so every Sunday we're gonna have them. We'll be giving updates. So my main message is these next 35 days is when all of us need to be vigilant. We need to know who's in our county, what's going on in our county, and what's going on in our state. Like the election is at that level now. So read the news, contact reporters, flag things for them too if you're seeing it. Yeah, and there's a lot of other things you can do that we talk about in the guide.
Well, thank you so much for even creating the guide and doing all this work. It's going to be so helpful. We need it. Everyone should get on board, definitely. We're going to move on to Tech News of the Week. So, Greg, you've got 2. Which one do you want to talk about? Hackers. I like hackers.
I think we should touch on the, very briefly though, I think we should touch on the Twitter and the Facebook story because it does tie into the Hold the Line stuff. So both Twitter and Facebook have announced that they have plans to label any posts which claim to know who the victor is in the election, including both Biden and Trump's accounts. So they'll label them saying that official sources have not called the race if they call it, if they post anything before that's happened. And this is, I mean, it goes back to Trump's thing of wanting to say he's won and claim that there's fraud if the results seem different after he said he's won. Again, I feel like this goes back to the Bush-Gore campaign, where Bush announced that he'd won, Al Gore conceded, and then there was all this information about problems with the vote. But because he'd conceded, he basically put himself in a position where he looked like he just decided he didn't like how the vote had gone. So I think this is good for two reasons, in that it stops that fake victory, but also it stops people kind of paying attention to people they shouldn't. You know, there are officials that should be announcing who the winner is, and those are the people that they need to pay attention to.
It'll be really interesting to see how closely Facebook and Twitter kind of do that. And again, this kind of harks back to, like, you know, talking about Facebook earlier and kind of, you know, funding hate in certain ways and all this kind of stuff. Are they going to stick to that? That'll be a really interesting experiment to just kind of see, for example, if Twitter comes out and is like, hey, this is fake, you know, results haven't been announced yet. Or if Facebook came out with the same thing, but it's like, oh, they won, congratulations. So it'll be really, I know that's going to be interesting to see whether they stick to it. And I know in the post that we're kind of looking at here, that it's just sort of said that Twitter, in an updated blog, is considering state election officials and national news outlets, including the likes of Fox News, to be kind of independent news sources. Like, I'm not going to sit here and kind of explain to people how crap Fox News can be, because I think we all know. So it's interesting to kind of see what they're classing as like official sources in a way. And I think it'll just be interesting going into tonight/today, depending on where you're based, to kind of see how that rolls out.
Yeah, I'm also interested in seeing like how the different news outlets start to report on this, because I think this is going to be an inflection point for them on legitimizing like whether they're credible sources or not. Like, you are going to blacklist yourself if you post, if you like start declaring a victor when there's complete unrest in the country, you know, saying that like these, you know, that news outlet was like false and stuff like that. So I'm interested in seeing which news outlets are going to do their homework and then how they're going to come out after this. Like,
yeah, because it's been good, haven't they, in terms of when we've seen as he's been doing more his press conference throughout his term, that some of the networks have been cutting away when it's just like, this is just like lies, like demonstrably false, and they'll cut away and fact check it. And I guess it's that they'll all have to face that challenge of, if he, I think Pennsylvania is one of the ones we're talking about a lot, isn't it? Where it might look like it's you know, the Republicans are winning because they're expecting the Democrats to come later, right? But, you know, does he stand on the lawn of the White House and declare victory? Having to balance the newsworthiness of, he's doing a speech, but then at what point do they have to cut away and say that's not how the elections work? Like, that's not how a winner is declared. And yeah, which ones are going to be willing to let him kind of draw on for 2 hours giving a victory speech before doing any kind of fact checking? It'd be fascinating. Fascinating. It feels like a macabre way of viewing it, but it will be as well, won't it, to see, like you said, which ones after this will you be able to say, well, you've lost any kind of legitimacy as the way you report the news now. Yeah, terrifying but interesting.
That should be like the mantra of this pod: terrifying but interesting. That should be like our new byline.
That was Greg's Tinder bio for a while.
Beat me to it.
Oh, that was really interesting, but I've just been wondering about the hackers this whole time. So who's been hacking what and why? And
everyone.
I just like the film The Hackers. I don't think it's anything like that in real life, but I think hackers are bad, right? They're bad. We hate hackers.
We know it's nothing like that. And I think what's interesting here is I've got two stories about both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party who have both been hacked. And I think it's a really interesting narrative about how no one is safe and that democracy and elections really need to change because of these issues. So you've got one which is kind of a traditional independent group of hackers who have stolen
traditional hackers. Sorry, I just really like that, like classic hacking.
Yeah,
that will be more like the film, I suppose.
Yeah, who are just after some money, you know, the kind of usual things, get some money or some information so that you can make some dosh. And then you've got the Russian hacker group Fancy Bear, which is my favorite.
Bear, I love
Fancy
it.
Bear.
Is that your Tinder handle, Greg, to go with your Tinder byline that we mentioned before?
No, that would be more of a grinder handle, really. So Fancy Bear have links to Russian military intelligence, and they have apparently been hacking the Democrats earlier on this year. Similar things to what happened previously, trying to access emails and you know, kind of access information so that it can be used against the Democratic Party.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if this is my own confirmation bias, but I don't know, one of the articles was like, allegedly it's been said that maybe potentially hackers stole some money. And I'm just like, yeah, they didn't, did they? They didn't steal any money. You didn't have the money in the first place. You're just trying to I don't know, it's just a really weirdly worded article. Hackers.
Well, they've got no formal confirmation. So because the Democratic hack happened earlier this year, they've had some more formal confirmation, whereas the Republican ones, if there is an ongoing investigation, the FBI won't make any statements about it. So it's just coming from Republican sources. I'm not sure if it's like who was it? The Fox News presenter who said he had evidence of wrongdoing and it got lost in the mail.
I'm sorry, but if we are going to talk about hacking, we can't like Trump having his Twitter account hacked by the Dutch bloke who like guessed his password as MAGA 2020. I'm sorry, but if you are president of the United States, no matter how little intelligence you may possess as a human being, having your password as MAGA 2020, I just think wins in terms of like hacking stories, because that is just hilarious. And he's had the same password. He had it like the first time around, and you're just like, what are you doing? What are you actually doing? It's crazy.
Was that not fake though?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that was real.
Oh, was it not real? Oh no, I've fallen for the fake news.
They put in loads of extra security.
Fake news, Schofield. Sorry.
Yeah, fake news, Schofield. Because it was Trump, wasn't it, that the Twitter employee was like, no, I've had enough, and shut it down for a day. So I think he has extra security, because that's why the Bitcoin scam didn't hit Trump. I think because even Twitter employees struggled to get in there.
I've shot myself in the foot. I'm one of the news sources that Marion was talking about earlier that's going to be blacklisted like after the election.
I'm just gonna remove you from the chat right now. I don't have access to that.
But that is an interesting one though, because the guy that claimed it, he was doing it to see if news outlets would share the story without really checking it, and many of them did. And I've seen a couple of actions like that this past week, actually, where people have posted fake news stories. Did anybody see, and this will completely go over the heads of our American friends, but a teenager set up an account pretending that Woolworths was going to reopen and have a complete rejuvenation, and all these news outlets picked it up and ran with it, and it turned out it was this teenager who wants to become a marketing student had just run it as a joke, and everybody went nuts over it.
To be fair, I'd hire him. Like I believed it for a second. And just as background for our American pals, Woolworths was like the shop of dreams that you went to as a kid. It's like, think Target, but like the shit English version, basically. And the best bit about Woolworths was like the pick and mix stand.
Pick and mix.
The pick and mix stand, and you could buy a bag as big as yourself for like $4. It was amazing.
Yeah, but I had a horrifying experience with the Woolworths chain in Oldham. The pick and mix used to come in like, you know, a soft drink takeout thing you get from McDonald's, but it's like the plastic container to fill up, right? A cup. Again, I'm not quite sure the American parlance of these sorts of stuff. I don't want to say, well, who takes, yeah.
We all say cup.
The cylindrical like device.
Yeah, a cylindrical device, like a almost cone, but with a flat edge at the bottom. So you used to kind of fill that up, and you take it to her, and she'd look at it in absolute disgust, and she'd get a carrier bag, and she'd put her hand in it, and then ram it down so you can fit more in that, and you'd go back 3 times.
Johnny, I don't think this happened at Woolworths, did it? I mean,
it was Woolworths in Oldham, and I was
I don't know what you're talking about, but
I don't want this much candy. I don't want this much. I almost had to say, I don't want any more. Please stop doing this. I just want to leave.
don't say for word, Johnny. Stop.
Terrifying.
That's the line
This
on
is
Johnny's
candy
Tinder
in
bio.
the bag, right? Like, I'm sorry, we're talking about candy. I just want
Yeah.
Are we?
I don't know anymore.
Oh no, I don't know. God
Yeah.
knows.
Do they have
Definitely candy.
pick and mix in America?
I have no idea.
Pick and mix is like
Pick and mix was the noun in this situation. Like we're putting
Pick and mix
like, I thought it was
candies.
a brand.
I guess our
Yeah,
equivalent
yeah.
is
So if you imagine like giant tubes of different types of candy, and you basically go and shovel
Yeah.
out like
Yeah,
and you just put it in a bag, so you can have like a different. So you pick what you want and you mix it together, and then you
Yeah.
charge by the weight.
we've got
I think the
that.
equivalent is like the Slurpees here. If you have like go and get the like red and the blue, and that's probably
Yeah.
the closest thing.
Yeah.
But
and
every mall
disgusting
has,
small
like-
children.
Those tubes. I don't know. We don't have like a brand associated with it. But
I don't think it's branded. Is it branded pick and mix, or is it
The
just
Woolworths
like?
was Candy King, and Candy King is like the pinnacle, the creme de la creme of pick and mix. But this is all viewed through the lens of disgusting children sticking their hands in the sweets and then sticking them in bags, and you're meant to go and like. I saw someone the other week in Tesco using the pick and mix with their kid in the times of COVID. I was like, what? Who? How is that a priority? But
I
can you
mean-
imagine dying for pick and mix? Imagine that being what kills you.
I mean, there's worse ways to go than dying from pick and mix, to be completely honest. I can think of worse ways rather than choking on a marshmallow flump or something, or catching the Rona from it.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't. I wasn't talking about them choking on it in the time of COVID. I was thinking more the spread of diseases through touching stuff. I don't think COVID makes you more likely to choke on your sweet.
It could do because it shuts up your airways.
Okay. I think
I don't know what's happening now.
Bex,
We have
please
gone off
move-
topic.
move us
And
on.
we nearly finished. So, like, I mean, I feel like there's no need for the "and finally" section to cheer us all up, because that was quite funny. But there is an "and finally" to cheer us all up, and this is something to do with whales. A sculpture of a whale
Yeah,
that saved
So-
a train.
this is amazing. So in Rotterdam, there's a train, and at this particular station, for whatever reason, it ran straight off the end. So it was supposed to stop, and it was on this raised platform, and it was supposed to stop, but it ran off the end. It wasn't going too fast, luckily. But the thing that actually stopped it and stopped anybody from dying was a sculpture at the end of the platform, which looked like a whale's tail. So the train shot off the platform and landed on the whale's tail. The reason I put it in is because the name of the statue was
Just read
Saved
this.
by the Whale's Tail.
The name of the statue is called "Saved by the Whale's
By the
Tail."
Whale's Tail. Yeah,
Wow.
No,
yeah,
that's
It's
just
meant-
weird.
yeah.
Good marketing. Was this
Yeah.
Told you,
was
it's
this the
that
Woolworths?
kid. It's that
The Woolworths
Woolworths kid.
teenager. Yeah, it
Oh,
probably isn't
Woolworths kid.
real. It's probably a lie.
all manifesting in the US.
I've got one last question for our friends over in America, and it's probably the most important question of the podcast. Do you have dogs at polling stations in America? It's a social media thing that happens here every time we go to vote, and everybody who has a dog takes their dog to the polling station and posts a picture of their
That's
dog.
a
outside the
brilliant
polling
idea.
station.
I'm so jealous. We
Yeah,
don't.
wow. We don't.
Oh my god.
What a
Looking
missed
out,
opportunity.
guys.
We should have had this conversation 2 weeks ago and we could have made it a campaign.
This
You
is
wanna
like-
get
These are
people
real
voting.
priorities. Like you want to make you want to increase voter turnout. Bring a bunch of
Right.
dogs.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
No wonder you all have high turnout there.
We both have a thoroughly broken democracy, but at least we do have dogs at polling stations. The one bright part of our previous election was, at least we saw the dogs. Yeah.
I love that. Is
On
there a
that
hashtag that goes along with this?
Oh, dogs at polling stations.
Oh,
That's the
hashtag.
hashtag.
Okay, great.
It's very literal.
Yeah.
This is in the
We're
name.
not great wordsmiths. Since Shakespeare passed, we've not really been great with coming up with words, so we're just very literal.
I've lost it. Oh no, I'm bringing it back. I can bring it back. Okay, I have to do the outro. That is all we have time for today. Thank you for listening. But yeah, I mean, Mariam, Anka, how was that for you? Is it all right?
This is absolutely brilliant. I would love to come back again. What a treat. What a
That's
treat.
I
This is
needed today.
exactly.
They're never going to speak to me again, Bex. Like, this is it. Like, I'm also colleagues with these two lovelies, and this is it. They're
Wait, I
gonna
can
go my
mute you. I'm
slacks.
just going to mute you in case you're lying. I did
Not
it.
like
Yeah, who knows anymore?
Ah,
Think
I
what you
muted
say.
you. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so sorry. But here's a chance to like plug anything you want. Last chance. Where can people find you both on the internet or the work that you're working on? What are your last thoughts?
Are you going to take it?
Okay, sure. Visit our website, holdthelineguide.com. It has all the links on there. And then visit us on Sunday, like hang out with us. Like we're going to be talking about really important stuff. And then follow us on social. We have Instagram and Twitter at the Red Line Guide. Right. I think that's right. At the Red Line Guide.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Listeners, what did you think? Should we go live more often? Probably not, right? I don't know why I've read that out because the answer is definitely no. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Get in touch on Twitter at TechForGoodLive. You can email us if you want as well. That's hello@techforgood.live. And we'd love it if you gave us a nice iTunes review and told your mates about this weekly podcast. Why do we do it weekly? Thank you to podcast.co for supporting us. That's it. That's all. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.